One person's goal is to fire financial independence, retire early as fast as possible. The other person's goal is to file financial independence, live early, and kind of cut back on work, but not retire. Is it okay if one person retires while the other person still works? Don't know. Where do you want to live? What if one person wants to live by the water and the other one wants to live in the mountains? Don't know. How do you figure that out? And you have to figure out a life plan that fits the two of you before you figure out your financial plan. You have to have a plan that says either we're going to do this together, separately, or kind of combo, because otherwise your money is just going to go anywhere and we won't get to it. We're not following the standard life script, so we don't have to make the same choices as the standard life script, but we do need to pick as a couple, where are we going? And that takes communication, that takes regular discussion, and sometimes some compromise.
Welcome to the Childfree Wealth Podcast, hosted by Bree and Dr. J, Certified Financial Planner. Here we discuss life and finances as it relates to being child-free. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Please consult your advisor before implementing any ideas heard on this podcast. Hey, Childfree Wealth listeners. Today we're doing something we haven't done before. We're dropping 3 episodes. These episodes can be listened to together or separate, whatever resonates with you most. Each episode is going to cover something different. The first being how financial planning changes if you're a soloist. The second, how financial planning works as a couple. And 3, financial planning if you're in a group. Be sure to check out the episode that resonates with you most, or all 3. Enjoy!
Hey, Childfree Wealth listeners. We are back in our book club, but a little different. We are doing the Childfree Guide to Life and Money, my new book, and I'm diving into each chapter and pulling some nuggets out of it. If you haven't bought the book yet, come on, what are you waiting for? It's not that expensive. Order it from your favorite bookstore or go to your library and ask them to carry it. So today we're going to be talking about financial planning as a couple. Now, full transparency, there's a lot of things that happen with couples and finances. I am not going to be covering it all in this episode, but I'm going to give you some examples and work this through. As a couple, I have people ask me well, should we combine finances? Should we have one checking account? And the truth is, really, whether your accounts are together or not, doesn't matter much. I think it's simpler to have less accounts, but whatever. What matters is, are you doing finances and life planning together or not? There's kind of 3 options here. There's one is, it's all combined. We're all in the same life plan, same financial plan. Cool thing there is we've got joint goals. Bad thing there is we got joint goals. So there's some things that you might need to sacrifice. I'll come back to that in a minute. The second choice is where we're going to do everything separate. This is kind of like you're living like roommates. Nothing wrong with that. I do my thing, you do your thing, we do our thing. And what ends up happening there is you are doing life planning and financial planning alone. And you're essentially living the soloist life, but you're sharing space. Perfectly fine. By the way, also debate about should you get married or not? Well, when people ask me, should I get married? Does it save me money? My answer is, well, do you need health care? If you need health care, yeah, planning as a couple might be a good idea. Otherwise, maybe not. Notice when I say couple, it doesn't have to be married. The third option as a couple is the hybrid approach, yours, mine, and ours. So we have some goals and some planning together and some individually. And I see this often, kind of we're going to buy a house together, but we're going to do everything else separate. I'll be transparent and say the third option of yours, mine, and ours is actually the hardest from a planning standpoint. Doing everything together, there's some communication we need to do together, get on the same plan. Doing things separate, we're on our own thing, we're doing our thing. The yours, mine, and ours becomes this question about, well, how much do my goals impact yours? What happens if I make different amount of money than you do? And where we're going to go? It's actually the hardest. A lot of people do it because it does provide a little extra freedom. There are some ways to provide freedom within a couple without having completely separate things. But if you're going to do yours, mine, and ours, you need to be still talking about stuff and planning together on the ours part. Some tests for this. People say, well, we're just doing everything separate. Okay. Well, if your spouse, whether you're married or not, has a disability and can't work, would you support them? If you would, you're not truly planning separately. It's one of those kind of tests. You can have your own goals, your own money, but still plan together. A lot of times, if I have people that plan together, we'll set up what we call pocket money. Spend it on whatever you want. Who cares? Your spouse doesn't get to vote in it. It's X amount of money per month, whatever. My wife, she'll spend hers on fruit dresses. Okay, yeah, I probably have to explain this. Fruit dresses are like floral patterns, but with fruits and vegetables. I don't know. She finds them all over the place, loves them. She's in food research. It fits. I don't have any interest in fruit dresses. Just don't. I take my money, put it aside, and I'd rather save up my money over months than get something bigger. I still need to buy a new laptop. I love boating. There's a bunch of things. More expensive, less often. It doesn't matter how you use the money as long as you have it planned. Also, as a couple, you need to figure out that life plan and figure out, okay, are we all on the same plan or not? My wife and I embrace what we call gardener and the rose. And you may have heard of this as the gardener and the flower, but I call it the gardener and the rose because my wife is not just any flower. She's a rose. And in the gardener and the rose approach, one person's growing while the other one provides support. Right now, my wife is the rose. I provide support. And I literally do the gardening and take care of the house and, paying the bills and doing all that so that she can focus on her career and her growth. The key with the gardener and the rose is you got to have a plan for, all right, when are we going to have the roles? Have a discussion and then switch at some point. We're going to do this gardener rose for 5-7 years-ish, and that'll be my turn. My turn, we're going to get a boat and travel the world. So it's not always like the growing is about like job or career, but it's about giving each person an opportunity to focus on them and kind of be selfish and grow. This comes out of my wife and I are both PhDs, come out of the academic world. In the academic world, they will have somebody gets a job, that's the first person, and then a leftover job for the quote-unquote trailing spouse. And by the way, I hate that term, kind of like the leftover spouse. But that's where it comes from, where, somebody's taking the lead, because the odds are, if you're trying to be the top of your career, top of your life, top of whatever, you might not be able to do that at the same location at the same time. Now, if you're planning completely separately, who knows? You might. When we're doing the yours, mine, and ours, the garden and the rose may or may not work as well. The challenge is, what happens if we end up with different sets of goals? So let's go back to the yours, mine, and ours structure. What happens if one person's goal, and I've had this with people I've served, one person's goal is to fire financial independence, retire early as fast as possible. The other person's goal is to file financial independence, live early, and kind of cut back on work, but not retire. Is it okay if one person retires while the other person still works? Don't know. Where do you want to live? What if one person wants to live by the water and the other one wants to live in the mountains? Don't know. How do you figure that out? And you have to figure out a life plan that fits the two of you before you figure out your financial plan. You have to have a plan that says either we're going to do this together, separately, or kind of combo, because otherwise your money is just going to go anywhere and we won't get to it. We're not following the standard life script, so we don't have to make the same choices as the standard life script, but we do need to pick as a couple, where are we going? And that takes communication, that takes regular discussion, and sometimes some compromise. There's a book, it's not like the 80% merit or something like that. And there's a theory that like you could each have 80% of what you want, but can't have 100%. That's an option. I haven't seen that work. I've had some folks who say, well, I'm not going to do the garden of the rose. We're just going to kind of split the roles. That only works if you have enough money to actually like hire out the gardening roles. Maybe you do eventually. You have to figure out as a couple what matters. I will also say as a couple, really helpful to have a third person help you on your life and financial plan. There are just some things that aren't heard the same through a couple as they are as an individual, a professional. And I'll give you an example of this. In financial world, the kind of joke, and it's true, is you can't coach anyone who you've seen naked or they've seen you naked. I mean, you can't coach your parents, you can't coach your spouse. I say things all the time that people have said to each other. It's just heard differently because it's from a third person. Don't be afraid to bring in a third person to help you set the life plan, set the financial plan. You can execute it, but to make sure we're all on the same page.
If you enjoyed the show, please consider leaving a rating or review. We'd love to keep the conversation going. Please let us know your thoughts wherever comments are available, or email us at media@childfreewealth.com. To stay up to date, find and follow Childfree Wealth on social media. If you're interested in working with us, learn more by visiting our website, childfreewealth.com. We'll see you next time.